You're listening to P&P Pals, Tabletop Role-playing Radio Theatre. Mablespring's common folk have gathered to gawk. It's to be expected. To them, a tiefling and a mage are the stuff of myth. Despite that, someone else soon steals the spotlight.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hiya. Well, look at that. A pleasure to meet you.
You're just the sweetest.
And such good manners. Hi there.
Hello, little lady.
Hello. Well, where did you come from? Absinthe marches to the bar counter unabashed, Janice following closely behind. To each patron they pass, Absinthe delivers a wave, a smile, a short hello, and her kindness is returned. Every time.
Rooted near the door, Anise asks Retribution,
Should we stop her?
"What for?"
I'm not sure. I have a sense that this isn't okay. Either we should discourage her from talking to strangers, or we should discourage her from interrupting people's lunches."
Leaning in close, Retribution whispers, "Lunch? I hope not. That is an entirely inadequate lunch."
Glancing around, a conspicuous number of people seem to have no food, just drink. What's more, water? Why would they walk in from their fields just for...
Turning towards Retribution, their faces nearly collide. While Anise scanned the common room, her friend had silently moved in close behind her. Now she beamed in an exaggerated, almost cartoonish fashion. Her mischievous grin accentuates longer than usual canines. A finger flits back and forth through the hair that cascades around one of her horns.
Yes, I see. They're not really here for lunch.
Retribution eases back. I can't blame them. It's not every day you see someone like me, after all. That said, someone seems to have distracted them. Her hand extends, pointing to Absinthe.
The young girl throws both arms up, punctuating some story. Behind the counter, a trio of people stand laughing. 2 older women, and a young man around Anise's age. Well, one person stands. The taller of the 2 women squeals with laughter as she falls onto a seat nearby. The boy doubles over, dropping behind the counter and out of sight. A thud follows, presumably from him finding the ground. Her audience reeling, Absinthe rotates on the spot, turning to grin at her sister. She slides a plate of food and a short mug down the bar counter. Janice smiles back gratefully.
If she can always do whatever this is, I imagine it's how they got by on their own.
How they got by on their own until they were kidnapped by brigands.
Yes, until the very moment they were snatched by highwaymen.
One of them was a highwaywoman.
I appreciated that. Most outlaw organizations are monogendered, from what I've seen.
Oh, like the Ivory Court.
Sure. Now, where did you hear about them?
The next stage of Absinthe's performance begins. It requires a bold new form. Her bottom's on the counter, both feet occupy a bar stool. She leans low across the counter to better address the young man on the ground behind it. Then, turning abruptly, she waves the mercenaries over.
Come here!
Anise looks hesitant, like a deer considering flight. Putting a hand on her back, Retribution starts forward, lightly pushing the surgeon along.
These are the people I was telling you about. The tall one is Retribution, and that's Anise. They saved me and Janice from some pretty bad guys. Here.
She points at each of the women, then sweeps an arm vaguely behind the counter.
This is Lacey and Peanut, and that's Al. They told me the town's been worried over those bandits for a while, and the mayor wants to thank you for getting rid of them. He's supposed to be here soon, right?
Yes, ma'am. We've already sent for him. And can I just say, it's amazing that you saved these 2 little ones. We knew that ruffians were stirring up trouble out there, but we had no idea how many there were. Retribution lets loose a short sigh. Well, the specifics of the situation may have been exaggerated in the recounting.
Both women chuckle lightly.
Absinthe? Just how many ruffians were there?
The child withers under her accusatory gaze.
7! I said 7!
Folding her arms, Retribution's face turns thoughtful. 7, that's a very conservative embellishment, young lady.
Absinthe looks away. For a split second, nearly imperceptibly, she frowns. Her hands move together. index fingers bouncing off one another as she speaks.
I told the truth. You maybe wouldn't have had to fight them if my sister and I didn't lure you in, so I counted us too.
A second passes before Retribution lays a hand atop Absinthe's head. It's sweet that you're worried about such things, but it's also nonsensical. We needed to go west along the trade road anyway, child. We should consider that battle preordained.
Her smile returning, Absinthe looks to Retribution.
What does preordained mean?
It means I need to find you a dictionary before we leave town.
That's a very specific word.
Several minutes are spent passing stories back and forth over the counter. Satisfied with having glimpsed these odd drifters, a number of patrons filter from the inn. The young man, Al, brings himself back to his feet, then starts clearing tables. Most are spotless by the time the mayor arrives. Silver-haired with thick glasses, he's old for a human, but moves with an excited, youthful energy. He looks at the floor for a moment, allowing his old eyes time to adjust. When he looks up to Retribution, his eyes grow wide, not in fear, but intrigue.
I apologize for assuming, but would you be the one that cleared the road east? I would be one of the ones, certainly. She steps to the side, trying to reveal her partner. Anise, however, she takes a small step, trying reflexively to stay behind Retribution. A subconscious step isn't going to be nearly long enough, though, so she retreats from it midway. It's an awkward shuffle that sends her teetering. For some unknowable reason, Anise decides that the best way to resolve the situation is to issue the expectant mayor a meek smile, then slowly turn on the spot, back toward the bar. What is she doing?
What am I doing?
She's a mage. As powerful as she is eccentric, you see. That's fine. Have you eaten lunch? Retribution takes a seat with the mayor. Anise stays at the bar with Janice and Absinthe, sharing in their fresh cider, drinking juice alongside children, while the adults discuss business. The shame can't touch her now. Maybe later, when she thinks back to this day, it will seem embarrassing. Over lunch, Retribution explains their trip through the Myers Wood and the spreading fear of the war moving east.
The mayor introduces himself as Martin Little, offering the latest news from the war front.
Once she's given time for the mayor's food to settle, Retribution relates the end of Seth's gang. It's matter-of-fact reporting, delivered unflinchingly. That matches the descriptions, all right. Mrs. Wallen, one of our Wainwrights, she spotted you coming into town with a battered wagon. She thinks it's the one that was pilfered by that group of ne'er-do-wells some months back. I doubt that you'd be able to steal a limping wagon from a band of thieves, so, for me, that's proof enough that they're moved on. We've no reward for the task, except, well, I can arrange some hospitality for you and your companions. Thank you. That's very kind. If you don't mind, how'd the fighting break out? The elder sister was instructed to call for help, luring passers-by into an ambush. Fortunately for her, and very unfortunately for her taskmasters, she hooked a pair of compassionate mercenaries. Oh, mercenaries. You're headed over the mountains, then.
He looks thoughtfully at the girls. In this case, the girls seems to include Anise.
Are all of you headed that way? It would seem so. Absinthe doesn't seem to be eavesdropping. She continues. Their parents are indisposed. They say their closest family lives in Blueport. I think we'll need to go that far anyway. That said,
Absinthe looks across the common room toward them. She smiles, then waves.
Retribution responds in kind. Through her smile, I have some things I'd like to discuss with you. Could we meet elsewhere later? Certainly. Tomorrow morning, perhaps over breakfast.
He checks over his shoulder, then leans close to Retribution. He quietly whispers something, barely loud enough for her to hear.
She closes her eyes and exhales slowly. I know a bit more than that, but later. Yes, later, thank you. I'm glad to have heard about it now. Before I go, is there anything you need? She raises a hand as if to say, brace yourself, then produces a long supply list. Quite a lot, actually. If your town can't sell us most of this, we're going to be in a great deal of trouble.
The mayor bristles with pride.
Miss, I can promise, you won't find a better stocked village anywhere along the length of this valley. They talk trade for a long while. In the end, it seems that Mr. Little's pride was well founded. Afterward, they join the others at the bar to discuss their plans for the afternoon. They receive directions to a local corral that tends to visiting horses, a Wainwright with a particular interest in that wagon, the mayor's estate, a local tailor. There's much to be done. Today's session of P&P Pals brought to you by... Don't pay extra for an edge you're not going to use. Get your daggers from Erst Weapon Works for just 1 gold with 2 silver on the side. We cut costs with our single-sided cutters.
The air smells of sawdust and axle grease. 2 well-equipped tool sheds flank a sprawling open-air workshop. A modest single-story house sits nearby. It's predominantly made of stucco, like most of Mablespring's buildings, but is decorated in timber. A blood-red bird perches atop a wooden strut, eyeing Anise carefully.
Yup. This is one of ours, all right.
He motions for the group to peek at the wagon's undercarriage. Janice steps back as the others crowd around, leaning low. Seared onto the wagon's underside is a kind of crest, an ox in silhouette above the name Wallen. The Wainwright stands slowly, the group following with him. He jerks a thumb to a sign hanging outside his family's workshop, featuring the same insignia.
Bunch of bastards pinched it in the middle of the night 5 months back.
Silence follows.
Well, I heard you killed him.
He takes a long look at the towering woman and the blade hanging at her side.
That true?
Aye, made short work of him. She solemnly folds her arms. Anise swore to not be surprised by anything Retribution did anymore, so, while she's not surprised, she is curious.
Is she mimicking him? He spends several seconds staring up into Retribution's amber eyes.
She returns his gaze, dark and expressionless.
You'll have to pay me for repairs, but this wagon's yours.
Sounds good. How much, and when will it be done?
He paces the perimeter, scratching his chin thoughtfully, then,
5 gold, 5 days. That'll include a spare, just in case.
He points a stocky finger at the busted wheel.
We need a spare cloth cover, plus a hide one too, for the snow.
Cloth's expensive this season. Those'll run you another 6, sorry to say.
Producing a hand, she gives him a firm nod. As they shake, Anise hears the sound of popping knuckles.
The walk back to the Foothill Inn is several minutes long. Janice and Absinthe march ahead of their caretakers, pointing out the silhouettes of distant farmers, farm animals, and other curiosities. Retribution? As a mercenary lord, can you explain the tactical value in adopting a different manner of speech?
All that, you noticed, did you? Look at me, Anise. I don't exactly instill ease. Looking toward her friend, Anise's mouth slides slightly askew. She knew that tieflings were an oft-maligned people, but Retribution was courteous, considerate, clean. Anise has found that's more rare than it should be.
I don't take your meaning.
Well, consider this. Without any further warning, Retribution steps near in a single, sudden stride. Under her cloak, her wings flap once, sending the cloth and leather above them billowing. She extends a fist, then flicks it open, revealing sharp, claw-like nails. To conclude her demonstration, she tilts her head down slightly before snarling. Anise shakily alters course, her hip soon colliding with an out-of-sight fence post. She tumbles along a length of fence before grabbing hold of it to stop herself. Oh my, I'm sorry, Anise. But do you see now? Fennel had flown down to check on her, coming to rest on a post nearby. The sight of her deep red feathers was soothing. Anise takes a deep breath before righting herself.
No, that didn't illustrate anything. I've already seen you in battle. I'd recoil from anyone that could fight like you do.
That's nice of you to say, but I don't think I believe you. I'm sorry, what was your question?
You were mimicking that man's demeanor, and I don't know why.
Ah, yes. Most folk are drawn to the similarities they share with others, and it usually calms them. I have to put in extra work to achieve the same, that's all.
It's terrible that you have to do that.
You'll need to get used to it, my friend. We're going to be talking to a lot of people over the next few days.
The sun started to set on their walk. Absinthe had an idea.
You two are so much taller. You should give us piggyback rides, and then we'll all race to the inn.
Retribution feigns hesitation. Anise and Janice refuse outright, but they refuse outright together. There's a special kind of solidarity to be found between two spoilsports.
They arrive back at the inn minutes after sundown, likely due to a complete lack of piggyback racing. The inn has far fewer patrons than had been there near to noon. In spite of the low head count, dinner is waiting for each of them. Whole roast chicken, fresh sourdough loaves, alongside an array of stewed greens.
As they eat, Absinthe recounts the plants and animals they had spotted on their walk. Janice silently nods once for the ones she liked, reserving double nods for the handful she loved. Pear trees and sheep are her favorites, it would seem. The adults eat silently for several minutes. They both know it's time to have a conversation that will, in all likelihood, end poorly.
The thing I liked most was the tan lady's sun hat. I guess she got a pretty bad sunburn and got the hat after that. Oh, but the part I liked, a checkered scarf kept it from getting caught up by the wind.
Janice nods once.
Absinthe, you do recall that we were all walking together, don't you?
Yeah, of course, but you were too busy spooking Anise to pay attention to the important things.
Anise's mouth draws into a thin line at that, but she says nothing. Important things? Enlighten me. What are the important things?
How many cows did we pass on the way back here from the wagon maker?
Retribution can't even wager a guess.
A little more than a dozen. The girls both gasp.
Close! It's 15! I'm going to go ahead and give you full credit, and just say you lost count when you hit that fence. Sister?
Janice draws her left index finger down her right palm, presumably adding to a running tally.
There's that thin line again. Anise roils in her seat. You shouldn't pick on Anise. She'll turn you two into turnips if you're not careful. Besides, we need to have an important discussion. Do you two know what Anise and I are? Where we're going and what we're doing?
The kids look at each other meaningfully, then back to Retribution. They've been preparing for this.
You're going to go over the mountains and fight in the war because you're fighters for hire.
Correct. That's what we want to do. What about you two? What do you want to do?
The wording was unexpected. It granted them a kind of autonomy they didn't get from their parents, but it was still a version of the question they knew was coming. The answer is immediate.
We want to go to Blueport to find our pappy. I know we said we're looking for our parents, and we're going to keep trying that eventually, but...
Her chin drops. She stares at the half slice of sourdough left on her plate.
We've only been at this for 4 months, and I already got us mixed up with bandits. And, can I be honest?
I'd prefer it.
It wasn't going well before that. I don't think we can do enough stuff to find them. I mean, a plague could have taken those guys for me, and it wouldn't have helped. My sister probably would have starved before I got that stupid trunk open.
A shimmering drop risks falling from her cheek. She pulls her hand up quickly, dashing it and wiping her eye in one motion. Janice takes her sister's other hand between both of her own.
Little one, would you like to talk about this in the room we rented? Would that be better?
She looks up slowly. Her eyes are a little red and damp, but she's not crying.
No, I don't have much else to say. Can we go with you over the mountains? Maybe all the way to Blueport? I don't know how much mercenaries cost, but Pappy should be able to pay you.
Retribution's gaze falters, eyelids flickering absent-mindedly. Memories she buried deep over a decade ago claw their way up. She refocuses, looking Absinthe straight in the eye. There are a few things I need to say frankly. It seems unlikely that your parents still live.
They wince.
I found out today that Blueport is under a military blockade.
They recoil.
If you come with us, Even if Blueport and your pappy remain intact, there's no guarantee either of you will survive long enough to reach them.
They shrink, tremble, writhe.
You couldn't protect us?
I can't guarantee it, no. We're headed towards military-grade danger. If someone detonates a fireball on the wagon, that would probably be the end for both of you.
A fireball? That's literal, right? It's made out of fire?
Yes, but that was just one example.
Fire doesn't hurt you.
Not much, no. That's one of the reasons why I'm so hesitant. It's much, much less dangerous for me.
Absinthe's face turns fierce.
It's fine then, because you'd be alive and you'd kill them, right?
The hypothetical assailant that blew you up with a hypothetical fireball?
Yeah.
Not immediately, no. I turn them inside out first.
Absinthe faces her sister.
I think a promise like that's better than what we've got going now.
Janice nods once.
Anise stands abruptly.
I'll need to. I'll be in the room.
That's sweet. She gets a few points for that.
Janice tallies the points.
Composure faltering as she climbs the stairs, Anise decides to ignore their room for now. Passing it by, she walks down the hall onto a covered balcony. The wind cuts at her eyes, cheeks, chin. Absinthe was 13. Janice was 9. Their lives were ruined by forces outside their control. Anise thinks of what had happened in her own life over the past year, and some strange hope is lost. Like some imagined floor and catastrophe drops away.
9.
To say she struggled over the last year is an understatement. She can't fathom someone half her age facing it. But why try to fathom it? Why consider it at all? She barely knows these children. It's not about these children, nor is it about her. She feels the weight of an unjust world, one that sees a 9-year-old child and says, "Tragedy visits all. In my generosity, my magnanimity, I will afford this one the opportunity to learn of it, of how to contend with it sooner than most."
I think I'm giving my personified world undue credit. I probably shouldn't know a word like magnanimity.
A tip-tip sounds on the panes nearby. Fennel is checking in on Anise again. She's a beautiful creature to start with. Cast in moonlight, Anise thinks she's positively stunning, unlike any one bird she's ever seen. Bloody red feathers speckled with white, part owl, part hawk, an amalgamation formed from memory. She was proud of her work here. A year ago, she wouldn't have been able to conjure anything like it.
Like her, I mean.
Suddenly, she draws her spellbook from one of her jacket's big pockets. A pen flies to her hand from another. A well of ink floats nearby at the ready. The writing is quick enough at the start, then turns wild. The nib cuts into the page, staining the reverse side. Some short slashes shear into the page beneath. Fireballs, orbs of acid, freezing rays, bolts of ash and shadow. She'll see them undone.
I've no doubt about Retribution's power, but she's right. Powerful evocation magic could render Janice and Absinthe both from over 100 feet away. She can't protect them. She can't protect me from that. But I can, soon. In the meantime, I'll teach them all that I can.
When the others turn in for the night, the moon is blocked from view behind a dense cloud. Retribution's golden eyes see through the darkness that fills the hall. Seeing Anise writing with some gusto, she leaves her to her work. No reason to risk inspiring any more emotional episodes today. It had taken quite a bit of work to cheer up the girls, after all. She ushers Absinthe in quickly and puts Janice to rest on one of the beds. Before Absinthe can ask, "Oh, look what I found. A note from Anise. It says she has some time-sensitive magic to take care of, and she'll be working through the night."
You know, I've got to be more gentle around her. I had no idea she was such a I had no idea she was so sensitive.
Against her better judgment, Retribution chuckles at that. Desperate for a familiar face, two more walk willingly toward war. The music for our intro is composed by Walker Williams. We have links to him and his work in the description. P&P Pals is adapted from a 5th edition D&D play-by-post campaign and has been dramatized for your enjoyment. This show is produced by Precarious at best and heard by you. See you again, youthful traveler.